Sup, everybody? This is KARAK with ACG, and today we're diving headfirst into Rue Valley. This is a narrative point-and-click RPG about regret, repetition, and the kind of therapy session that ends with you just trying to outrun the apocalypse in a hatchback over and over and over again. Rue Valley is one of those games that crawls into your brain, redecorates with thrift store furniture, and refuses to leave until you've wrestled with at least 3 of your own resolved issues. Then, each morning, redecorates it again, slightly differently. It's a time-looped, third-person point-and-click game with a couple light RPG elements. At times, you could think of this as Disco Elysium meets Thimbleweed Park if both went to therapy and started smoking again, because they were told their problems were going to keep coming back in physical form until they got up close and personal, and then handled them all. Speaking of close, we're close to our goal for subscribers, so subscribe or become a YouTube member to leap into the Discord. Check out the Substack, where I've got stories and news about the industry and some fun-ass articles. And remember to like and comment. We'll be giving a couple codes away in the next week. Also, if there's any games out there you want me to cover in this form, throw them in the comments as well. Rue Valley doesn't take much time to really get started after a bit of a setup. You, as Eugene Haro, start in a therapist's office that just so happens to be inside a rundown motel in the middle of nowhere, because of course it is. And before long, you realize that you're repeating a part of the afternoon every single day. Every loop begins at the end of your therapy session. It's the same town, same people, same broken soda machine mocking your thirst. You're trying to break the cycle without spiraling deeper into an anxiety-riddled hell where the only thing you gain is self-awareness and a growing hatred of clocks. You find out through each loop you're here for some kind of therapy, for something mysterious. As you do find that out, something else mysterious is happening around you, sort of like going to a hospital for a burn that's on fire. Your personality traits, just a couple of them, handle and impact dialogue decisions, investigative steps, sometimes where you can go and how you do it, and who you can talk to. If they stray too strong on one end or the other, you can scare the hell out of somebody by being too extroverted, or elsewhere, you may not have the tact or the willpower to get the right answers from somebody else. And usually each time the time loop starts over, you can figure out some way to mix and match and get through a particular issue. But with some excellent editing, that loop doesn't become as decisively distracting as you would think, because each time the time loop starts over, you do, with some excellent and smart editing, get to actually parse some old conversations, speeding them up the next time you go through them. Each loop gives you a new angle on what's occurring. Maybe the town is cursed. Maybe you're dead. Maybe it's all in your head. Maybe you're stuck in bed. You don't quite know, but you got to figure it out. Or it could just be some kind of weird therapy or punishment. The writing keeps it ambiguous enough, especially at the starting, that you start to begin to project your own ideas onto what's actually going on. Where one loop has you thinking, okay, this must actually be what's happening, only to give this game's version of facts to indicate, nope, you're wrong. And because your choices literally shape your personality graph, you start to look at that and begin to question which version of you the world's going to respond best to on the next loop. Taking a drink in the morning can soothe out a bit of that extrovert, but also might end up adjusting a conversation here or there because you just don't actually act yourself, and another character doesn't like that. Or if you're like me, you try some odd stuff. For example, I just sat there a couple times letting the world burn, blowing my face off and lighting me on fire as I just watched the earth go up in glorious flames, but also found some information by just sitting and watching too. Well, yes, in many ways, the game's point-and-click title, it has some similarities to titles like Thimbleweed Park or Monkey Island and others, but with a bit more of that RPG rubbed off on it by utilizing the basic statistics. Don't expect this to dive into as much existential dread as Disco did. It's not really that over the top. But I love the idea of your emotions as skills, and not just the good ones where we see that in a lot of other games. Like anything in life, sometimes things are hard, like trying to shore up the want to get a drink of water, or to crawl out of bed, or fix an ice machine, or as you gather clues about whatever the hell's going on in your little section of repetitive fire burning, you gain clues about the situation, the people, strange going-ons, and sometimes they lead to actions you can take or sort of mini submissions you can attempt, but not if you don't have the actual inspiration to do so. Inspiration you can get by looking around at different beautiful things in the game world or finding a reason to continue, especially in this time loop. You're consistently teetering on what the fuck and not given any. So sometimes attempting a mission brings up a problem that just you don't have enough willpower to really push through. And the cloying anxiety of that clock in the top right counting down to an all too short doomsday continues to draw you between a bit of that anxiety and sometimes the lethargy that might pop up when you realize the apocalypse is coming. It's like rolling a character in D&D, except instead of strength or dexterity, you're assigning points to give a damn or keeps eye on the actual prize. And those will pop up in dialogue choices and can be used, or investigation choices. It's not just flavor text. Then there's the memory graph. This is sort of a big hook, and it's a lot like the Sherlock Holmes mind palace. It's your mind rendered as a web of connected memories and tensions and psychological states. Every conversation clue or emotional choice gets added or alters a node, which is sort of in the form of a collectible card for whatever that particular thing is. The loop itself plays out like a bit of a narrative time-based puzzle. Events happen on fixed schedule. Everything you do, looking through someone's email, arguing with somebody while trying to get out of being caught in their room that you're not supposed to be in, or anything else really just eats up time. You can manipulate these by being early, late, or drunk. Get tipsy, your social skill goes up. Anxiety meds flatten your emotions but block empathy. And I'm sure as you've listened to this, you've realized what the game looks like. Visually, Rue Valley is like somebody handed a comic book artist a little bottle of bourbon and told him to paint depression. The game's visual language is actually pretty excellent. For example, entering a ransacked apartment strewn with papers and the tension of a person in the throes of a situation reflected in the items therein. The game's celebration of its time loop also reflects in its moments of almost wistful beauty. I loved some of these. Sitting and staring across a vista, you get an inspiration point just looking out at what nature can make, while the character's sloppy, slopey walk and movements betrays a bit more emotion than a lot of games can actually deliver in dialogue itself. Art style in particular is used to set this different mode of tension. Characters jitter literally. There's this subtle sketchline shimmer around people like they're vibrating slightly out of sync with the world, and it makes everybody feel unstable, like the artist's hands shaking while they draw. It is intentional. It's a visual manifestation of anxiety codified into making sure the world doesn't feel too static. The protagonist isn't just nervous, the art itself can't hold perfectly still around him. Now, you can turn the effect off in the settings, but honestly, that's like asking a horror game to please stop being dark. You're going to see footage of each version here, though, just in case. While at the first parts, it did sort of bother me a bit, the longer I played it, the more I felt that it absolutely fit everything that I was experiencing, so I left it on. A lot of the moments that matter are done very well. Technical performance is pretty good, though I did have a couple stutters when transitioning between scenes. Especially, there's a sequence where a character pulls their hood up in the rain or occasionally sprinting across a graveyard, and you would see some stutter there, or one big long load stutter. There was also an odd black screen during the later drive sequence that lasted like a minute and then randomly resolved itself without me doing anything. On the Legion and the last Gen 1 X-Player Pro, the game ran amazingly well. It's not going to tax the system, it's not that kind of game, but it will deliver pretty damned evocative small sections of time and life to you. Sound up first. If the graphics paint the anxiety, the sound should technically offer up the canvas. It does okay at this. First, I enjoyed the fact of repetition rocking out at that faint static pop as the universe hits save reload at the end of each loop, and the ding of a call from a specific person alternates between, oh my god, not again, to holy crap, thank god, because I really need to talk to him about something. Little elements play out here and there in the close environment, but sadly, the same cannot be said for a lot of the ones later on or farther away. For example, the same person that can be heard beating up a pop machine in a motel parking lot, even in your Matrix Clue Palace, drives off on a motorbike that isn't a EMV silent kind of thing. It just simply makes no sound. That kind of thing pops up sometimes, and honestly, aside from some birds here or there, I do wish it was a busier audio environment. The score matches the game tones well, though. Dreary but darkly humorous. There's this hilarious motif that plays every time you have longer jaunts to particular places in the vehicle. Some playful notes that mimic your own frantic attempts to see if going 88 miles per hour will somehow send you somewhere in time, pretty much anywhere else. The other music here is a mix of ambient themes, laid-back scores, most of them in the subtly tense, eerie, or mysterious vibe style. Voice acting, of course, this is important here. It's surprisingly sharp for a smaller studio. There's a gas station clerk who talks about her family like she's reciting a eulogy she's already given 5 times. The motel receptionist won't shut up about key cards and door locks, and the occasional discussions with each one of them unlocks more and more and more and more until you start second-guessing what you were told before, because technically the reset means you weren't told before. You weren't told at all. But that doesn't mean everything's perfect here. For example, timing of interactions can be tricky because it's not only an interaction with your phone to move time on, but sometimes an interaction with an event, a person, or a location at the same moment. So you can pass time on your phone to wait for an event, but occasionally the game skips almost a minute too far. Also, while the game itself is unique, the focus on characters whose mental health is mixed up in their own fantasy, which may or may not be fantasy compared to the rest of everybody, is really awesome to work through, but it doesn't do any favors for new players to the genre, meaning it's not set up as a game that has a lot of tutorials or guardrails or explanations or examples, and it dives in pretty deep and heady. I liked it. In fact, I love the idea of games that handle these kind of things, but in fact, may not be for everybody. Let's talk about fun factors. So, if you assume that the clues, emotions, and items are all like just different inventory items that sometimes can subtly change depending on how you use them, you're going to enjoy the game much more. Where most games measure progress in XP and loot, this one measures how close you are to forgiving yourself or somebody else. Played through it once and now I'm doing it again as I think to myself, how do I want to play this character this time? Can I get through it faster this time? There's a couple mysteries and different clues I didn't get the first run through, and I want to try that again. So after more than 14 hours in Rue Valley, I'm convinced this might be something special. The personality, the memory system, honestly, they're not necessarily innovative or offering anything outside of what we expect as long as we assume or understand that they're inventory items, but the way in which the game actually offers introspection is enjoyable. Hopefully they can shore up a couple of those little technical issues and maybe make it a little bit easier for you to decide or make the decisions you need. Add maybe a spot or two on the time delay that you have in your phone. Comment, like, subscribe. Like I said, we give out codes at the end of these all the time. I would also love for you to check out Substack and Discord. Hey, you know what? I also have an Amazon affiliate link, which I always forget to end up throwing in here. You can use that link. It helps out the channel. It doesn't really cost you anything, just throws a little bit to the channel. As always, peace out and enjoy the rest of your week.